So how many of you did see wrappings? All right, so about half. How many have never heard the term wrappings before? It's all brand new. Okay, so there are a few of you. And just let me say, it's a magical experience that gets more magical every time you experience it. And in this 50th anniversary year of its production, we were able to bring back some of the original cast to perform in it, and lots of new voices. And that's going to be the conclusion of the sermon, as well as the opening of it, okay? So I'm going to take another look at the Generations passage. Thank you, Tom. That was a perfect way to do it. And in the production of Wrappings, it's a hilarious piece of business with all of those funny names drug out to musical notes that go all over the place. So you finally get to enjoy that passage, the first chapter in the book of Matthew, which is a great Advent story. It's about generations. Its point, likely, is to say that we had a lot of continuous, undisrupted, uninterrupted history as Jews, and guess what? It's over. Something really new is about to happen to the Jews. And if you noticed, I'm betting some women noticed, that the whole list is men, and who's the hero, heroine in the next thing? Not only is God going to break out of the generational definition of history, God is not going to name the chapters of history by the name of their rulers. God is going to name history by the lowest thing God can find: a woman who has to be protected by a man. So this baby, born of humans, is now going to represent God. You can imagine the rulers might not like that either. It's a little like one of us going to genealogy.com, right? And there's this beautiful arc of our Northern European history that all of a sudden falls down and gets into Africa somehow. And we say, I paid money for this? That's not my history. My history has to be continuous and make a kind of logical sense. This first chapter of Matthew does not make logical sense. That all of a sudden we had all of this 14 times, and then 14 more times, and then 14 more times, and now we've got this. What is that about? It's also saying that history is actively being interrupted by the divine. The divine has shown up to shake things up. You thought that's what God was? I'm here to tell you God is different. God is a baby. God uses power differently. Instead of naming the chapters in history, and I'll say more about this later, by the male rulers, we're going to name the chapters by some things that we do. We're going to do some new things, and we're going to shake it up. And the people who are unimportant are going to become important. So watch out. Now, in congregational studies these days, there is a whole school that says stop naming the chapters of the congregation's history by the pastors. The Adoniram period, the Italian period, the Moody period, the Carmines period. You see how this history is going, right? The Carmines period, the Larman period, and then the Schaper period, and then the Busey and Holly period. That is just the wrong way to think about congregations. It would be much better if we thought about congregations as the time when we majored in abortion rights, the time when we majored in immigration, the time when we put a new red tile roof on the place. Name it by the actions of the people and stop looking at history as ruler-driven and let it be Jesus-like and people-driven. But I'll say some more about that later. Because the text is really about generations, it's important to notice that the subject of generations is rather trending these days. I got lots of feedback about the Hey Boomer sermon a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I loved the feedback. I could tell I was trending for a change. But I do want to say something about the Matthew comment about generations. It could be important, and it might even be important to our congregational meeting today. When history takes a sharp curve, when history doesn't feel continuous, we had a big fight about it. Warren thinks history is continuous. I don't think it feels continuous. That's another subject. It's really hard on old people. Right? We don't like it. What's with us? We had Warren's college roommate in for the weekend, and he, like Warren, is Jewish, and together they put up our Christmas tree, which is a first for Mark, a practicing Jew. And he was appropriately sardonic about it. And yes, one of the main issues in Christianity is called supersession, or that we are supersessionist, which means that we end up as Christians thinking that we're better than the Jewish faith, right? And Matthew is as supersessionist as they get. The whole first chapter is all about that great period, and then along comes this baby. For a long time, we had all those folks, and now we have a new God, and ours is better than yours. Anyway, Mark told Warren a story which I overheard. I was in the kitchen. One of his Jewish friends brought home an Asian woman to introduce to his parents. He was obviously setting the situation up for an engagement. And the mother responded to the son as follows: "I did not survive Auschwitz for you to bring a shiksa into my house." Shiksa. Excuse me, did I say Auschwitz right? I did not survive Auschwitz for you to bring a shiksa into my house. In case you don't know what Auschwitz was, it was a place where Matthew's version of history, "Now we are better," went to a violent extreme, just like most lies usually do. And in case you don't know what a shiksa is a Gentile, an outsider, not good enough for a Jew to be around. So I actually think Jesus is really good, but I don't think he's better. And I don't think he's best. I think he is instead different. And maybe that would be a way to enter the generations conversation from a theological door. When younger people say today they are different, it would be marvelous for older people to say, "Cool, way to go," instead of "you're hurting my feelings." When younger people say they are different, it would be great if they didn't necessarily act like they were an improvement on history. I am still enchanted for having chanted at age 29, you know what it's going to be, "Nothing like us ever was." There are many parts of my youthful exuberance for which I am proud, and that slogan is not one of them. Oh, gosh. No generation is without flaws, and no generation is without tremendous virtues. No generation is perfect. No congregation is perfect. So there's a lovely, lovely article for contemplatives about trying to choose a church. And it's really it could have been written by the person who came up with the Judson slogan about the perfect church for imperfect people, because it basically argues, and anybody who's interested in it, I'll summarize it, it's really good. She says, go shopping. Make sure that your triggers are not also their triggers. In other words, join the imperfect church for imperfect people aware of what's wrong with you and what you don't want to put up with and what's wrong with them. And every time any church tells you it's better than any other church, run. So, what is happening today, religiously, is not Matthew's imperial pronouncement or even generational conflict all by itself. Mostly what is happening is that religion and the inner life are being individualized, customized, isolated, and lonely. Meditation is so popular at NYU, in the Chapel Center, that it would be a good idea to rename it the Center for Meditation, because it is not a center for spiritual life. Spiritual life includes meditation, a beautiful thing, but it is not limited to meditation. Meditation follows cultural trends in being so incredibly alone and individualized and so deeply internal that its magnificent calm sometimes gets stuck there. Sometimes, not all the time. I know why people have turned to meditation and away from the communal aspects of religion. I've read the emails where people in the congregation fuss with each other about trivial things, and not just in this congregation, but in everyone I've ever served. Democracy and self-governance are hard. They're really hard. And no one has taught us how to do it, and the more we can meditate and develop enough inner calm to manage our self-governance, the better. So let's meditate away. The only way things ever really improve, though, in congregations is not through meditation, but it is instead in places where humility rears its powerful head in any conversation. And that's one of the great things about Jesus. He appreciated the loss the old were experiencing while also changing things. He didn't let their grief stop him, but he didn't do it without humility. He did his change work with great humility. He got himself riled up every now and then in the dry and dusty temples of his time, yes. But mostly he advised and embodied a loving humility that asked the temple of his time to change. He didn't survive Auschwitz. He also brought in one shiksa after another and gave her a home. And finally, he didn't brag about how great he was, but advised people to go low to get high, to be servants as kings, to lose to gain, to get small to get large. And he advised full union of inner calm and outer courage, like this, not like that and that, like this. Inner calm and outer courage. The individual inner life mattered to him, and the outer communal life mattered to him. And that's why Christianity is a great religion when it is small, and such an awful religion when it goes imperial. People leave religion when it gets imperial. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Who needs more kings, more orders, more guilt trips, more put-downs, more domination by external systems? People create and build religion and its beautifully flawed institutions when religion brings humility. So I went to the cathedral uptown for the first time in my life. I don't get along with most Catholics. I try, but I don't. And the service was called by the Cardinal, Cardinal Dolan, who I think is a very fine man. And we're actually kind of friends. And it was called to memorialize the people on the streets who had died this year. A good project. And all the highfalutin people got together and we robed up and the mayor spoke. And we all patted ourselves on the back about what great providers of shelter we are and we're going to be in this great city of New York. And Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer was not invited to speak. And when the mayor got done and we were processing out in our various robes and garments, Gail came up to the man who was the Cardinal's organizer for the event, a man named Joseph Rosenberger, yes, on the Cardinal's staff for 30 years. And Gail said, "You know, Joe, I've known you for a long time, and this whole thing was full of S-H-I-T, only she didn't spell it." She said, "Here's the deal. The Catholics have the land, and the city has the money, and we don't need shelter. We need housing." And she said it so that everybody heard her. And she said, if I had been invited to speak, I would have said, we don't need shelter. And we don't need religionists telling us that they're going to be good and look good and act good by giving shelter. We need housing. I want to take it one step further in this context of generations and theology. And that step is what people really need is spiritual homes. Shelter will do for a while. But if you really want to be a part of a church, build houses and find a home. So what's really happening in American churches is, we call it deconversion, disaffiliation, but what it really, the big words only mean is that young people are fleeing religious institutions because they don't like the old people. And the old people are driving the young people away by not being able to change. And that has not happened here at Judson yet. We are more likely still to name our generations as the time when we did abortion and put the red roof on and had immigrants so numerous around here we couldn't find a closet in which to work our own computer. We will remember the last decade as the decade when Jean got deported. And that's why Wrappings was so utterly beautiful to me. Utterly beautiful. We heard the originals sing. We heard the originals sing. And then we added tons of new voices to the choir. We survived imperial religion. We survived Auschwitz. Let's bring the Gentiles all home. Not to our place, but to a place we build together. Amen.